Good evening and welcome. Tonight, I have 13 chilling tales of the paranormal, real experiences shared by people who felt the veil shift in the dead of night. Settle in, get comfortable, and let the darkness take control. I've lived in a lot of old houses growing up. My parents loved antiques, creaky floorboards, that kind of thing. But there's one house I don't like to talk about. Not because I don't remember it well, but because I remember it too well. I was 14 when we moved into a Victorian home just outside of Charleston. The kind with narrow hallways and tall, stained glass windows. I didn't hate it at first. In fact, I liked that my room had a fireplace, even though it didn't work. The walls were this deep red, and the ceiling had an old chandelier that swung slightly every time someone shut a door too hard. My parents called it charming. I called it weird. The first night I stayed in that room, I woke up around 2:30 a.m. because of this soft scraping sound, like someone dragging fingernails across wallpaper. It stopped when I sat up in bed. I thought maybe it was a rat or something. I wasn't thrilled, but I wasn't scared yet. What scared me was the second night. Same time, same sound. Only this time, I saw something. There was a woman standing in the corner of my room. Her back was to me. She had long black hair and was wearing what looked like a red dress, almost the same color as the walls. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but I sat up, rubbed my eyes, whispered, "Mom," and she turned. Her face didn't look angry or sad, just wrong, like it didn't quite fit her skull. Her eyes were too wide, and she was smiling too much, but her lips weren't moving. Just her teeth clenched together. I remember I couldn't scream. I couldn't even move. I blinked once, and she was gone. Just gone. I didn't tell my parents. I convinced myself it was sleep paralysis. Until the third night. The chandelier was moving, not swinging like before, rotating slowly. I lay there, frozen, watching the light bulbs flicker above me. I didn't hear the scraping this time, but I did feel something. Breath, right on my ear. I shot up so fast, I hit my head on the bed frame, ran out of the room, and slept on the hallway floor. The next morning, I had 3 long scratches across my lower back. My parents said it must have been the springs in the mattress. We stayed in that house for 6 more months. I refused to sleep in that room again. We turned it into storage, locked the door. But every so often, my mom would mention hearing footsteps upstairs when no one was there, or the chandelier turning by itself when she was cleaning. Before we moved out, the realtor asked why we were selling so soon. My dad joked that the house was haunted and laughed. The realtor didn't. She told him, dead serious, that the last family who lived there left in the middle of the night, and that the room upstairs, the red one, was supposedly where a woman had taken her own life back in 1931. She'd been found standing in the corner, facing the wall. I haven't gone back since. And sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I still hear that scratching. Soft, slow, patient. When I was 16, we moved into a house that had been empty for a while. It was a beautiful, old Victorian place with stained glass windows and creaky wooden floors. In the front sitting room, there was a piano left behind by the previous owners, an elegant upright, a little dusty, but in good shape. None of us played, so it mostly just sat there. The first night we spent in that house, I remember waking up around 2 a.m. I thought I'd heard a melody's slow, deliberate notes echoing through the hallway. It was subtle, like someone playing carefully, unsure of the keys. I assumed it was my imagination, but the next night, it happened again. And the next. Eventually, I asked my parents if they'd heard it. My dad said it was probably the house settling, but my mom looked a little unsettled. She said she thought she'd heard it too, but only once. One evening, Curiosity got the better of me. I decided to stay downstairs, hidden behind the staircase, waiting. At exactly 2:07 a.m., the piano started playing again, soft, almost hesitant strokes. I crept forward to look. No one was there. The keys were moving, just slightly, enough to produce sound, enough to make my breath freeze in my chest. I wanted to believe it was a draft, or maybe the mechanism somehow malfunctioning. But then the music stopped, and the bench scraped back like someone had stood up. I swear I saw the faintest imprint of a hand, not dusty like the rest of the piano, but clean, as though someone had just rested there. We eventually had the piano removed. The movers said it felt unusually heavy. One of them joked it must be cursed. We all laughed nervously. But that night, the music played again, and there was no piano left in the house. I was working the night shift at a small hospital. It was one of those older buildings with long, empty hallways and flickering lights that gave everything a faint yellow tint. Most of the staff had gone home for the night, and I was alone at the reception desk in the West Wing. Around 3:15 a.m., I noticed movement on the security monitor, a figure walking down the hallway on the 3rd floor. That was odd, because we'd closed that floor for renovations 2 weeks ago. I radioed maintenance, thinking maybe someone had snuck in. No response. So, like an idiot, I went to check it out myself. The elevator took forever. When I got to the 3rd floor, it was silent, completely silent. No footsteps, no voices, just the soft hum of broken lights overhead. I walked slowly down the corridor, calling out, "Hello? You're not supposed to be up here." No answer. Then I heard it, a door creaking open, 3 rooms ahead. The light inside flickered. I approached, heart pounding. The door swung open just a bit more, and I saw her. A woman in a hospital gown, standing in the middle of the room, facing the wall. I asked if she needed help, but she didn't move. I stepped closer, and I swear her feet weren't touching the ground. She was hovering. When she finally turned to face me, her eyes were missing. Just smooth, pale skin where they should have been. And she smiled. Not in a kind way, in a way that said, "I know something you don't." I ran. The footage on the security camera? Gone. Corrupted. The tech team blamed a power glitch. But I saw it. And every so often, someone reports hearing a woman crying softly from the 3rd floor, even though no one's been up there in years. When I was a kid, I used to spend summers with my grandparents. They lived in a quiet, rural area surrounded by woods. One summer, I found an old trail behind their property that I hadn't noticed before. I was curious, so I followed it. It led to a clearing with a small, crumbling stone well in the center. It looked ancient, covered in moss and vines. The area was dead silent. No birds, no wind, just stillness. I remember leaning over the edge of the well and calling down, just to hear the echo. But there wasn't one. Instead, I heard breathing from deep below. Slow, raspy breathing. I ran back home and told my grandfather. He didn't say anything at first. Then he told me never to go near that well again. That night, I heard knocking on my bedroom window. 3 slow knocks. The thing is, my room was on the 2nd floor. I didn't look. I just hid under the covers and waited for morning. The next day, the trail behind the house was gone, overgrown completely, like it had never been there. I asked my grandfather again. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "That part of the woods doesn't want to be found twice." I still don't know what I heard in that well, but sometimes, when I'm alone in the dark, I think I hear that same breathing, closer than it should be. I used to work as a nighttime janitor for an old high school. The place had been built in the 1950s and hadn't changed much since. My shift started at 10 p.m. when the halls were empty and quiet, almost too quiet. One night, I was mopping near the auditorium when I heard the piano playing. Just a few notes at first, soft and slow. The thing is, the piano on that stage was locked. Always. I'd seen the music teacher put a chain on it. Curious and honestly, a little creeped out, I peeked through the auditorium doors. Nothing. Empty seats, empty stage. Then one more note. Loud and sharp. I stepped inside. The temperature dropped instantly. I could see my breath, even though it was the middle of spring. The piano lid was open. I swear on everything, I saw the keys move on their own. Just a few, pressing down like invisible fingers were playing them. Then the lid slammed shut. The sound echoed through the whole building. I ran out and told my supervisor. He looked at me like I was crazy and said, "Yeah, she's been playing for years." I didn't ask who. I transferred the next week. A friend of mine dared me to try a haunted ritual we found online. You were supposed to light 3 candles, look into a mirror at exactly 3:33 a.m., and say your own name backward 3 times. I laughed it off, but that night I was bored and curious. I followed the steps. Candles lit, mirror ready, room dark. I spoke my name backward 3 times. At first, nothing. Then my reflection blinked. I hadn't. I leaned in. The reflection leaned back just a second slower than me. It smiled. I didn't. I backed away, blowing out the candles. My room felt heavy, like something had crawled into the air and refused to leave. For the next week, mirrors gave me a sick feeling. I'd catch glimpses of something just over my shoulder, always standing behind me. One night, I covered every mirror in the house. I thought that would help, but the next morning, one of the mirrors was uncovered, and written across it in foggy letters was my name, backward. My little sister used to have an imaginary friend named Tommy. She said he lived in the attic and only came out when the lights were off. At first, it was harmless. She'd talk to him, leave food for him on a small plate, draw pictures of him. He looked like a stick figure with 2 long arms and no eyes. Then things started going missing: peas, scissors, even one of our cat's toys. We asked her where they were. Tommy took them. He needs sharp things. That sentence stuck with me. I told my mom, but she waved it off. Just a phase. One night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps above me. The attic. I grabbed a flashlight and climbed the ladder. The air up there was freezing. There were drawings all over the wall, hundreds of them, in crayon. All of them of the same figure. Long arms. No eyes. And in the center of the attic was the missing stuff. Keys, scissors, broken glass, arranged in a circle. I turned to go, but something moved in the shadows. I never ran so fast in my life. We moved 2 months later. My sister never talked about Tommy again, but sometimes she still draws those pictures. A few years ago, I went camping alone to clear my head. Deep in the forest, far from town. No phone signal. Just me, the trees, and silence. On the second night, I woke up to rustling outside my tent. Not animals, footsteps. I stayed still, heart pounding. Then I heard whispering. It wasn't in English. It wasn't even a language I recognized. Just soft, fast murmuring circling the tent. I grabbed my flashlight and unzipped the flap. Nothing. The forest was completely still. Then I saw it. About 30 feet away, just barely lit by the moonlight. A tall figure, unnaturally thin, standing perfectly still. I aimed the light at it. It was gone. I packed up before dawn and hiked back. I didn't sleep the rest of the trip. Later, I looked up stories from that area. Several hikers have gone missing over the years, all near the same place. And one of them had carved a message into a tree before vanishing. They whisper when you sleep. I bought an old Polaroid camera from a thrift shop. It still worked, surprisingly, and had a strange charm to it. I took it to a nearby abandoned train station to test it out. I snapped a few photos and waited for them to develop. But when I looked, something was wrong. In every photo, there was a man standing in the background, always in the same position, black coat, head down. I hadn't seen anyone there. I took one more picture of the platform. This time, he was closer. I felt a cold wave run through me. I checked the station. Empty. That night, I left the photos on my desk. When I woke up, one was gone, and there was a fresh Polaroid on the table. Of me, sleeping. I used to live in a basement apartment with really thin walls. I could hear the upstairs neighbors walking, talking, laughing. I got used to it, but one night I heard something different. Dragging, like something heavy being pulled across the floor, back and forth, for hours. At 2 a.m., I went upstairs and knocked. No answer. I asked the landlord the next day if everything was okay. He looked confused. No one lives above you. That unit's been empty for months. I went pale. That night, I heard it again. The dragging. And this time, whispering too. I moved out a week later. Sometimes, though, when everything is quiet, I still hear it faintly, dragging across the ceiling. When I was younger, my mom gave me an old music box that used to belong to my grandmother. It played a soft, sad tune when wound. I kept it on my nightstand. One night, I woke up to it playing by itself. I hadn't touched it in days. I sat up in bed, heart racing. The tune slowed, then stopped. And in the silence, I heard a voice whisper, "Let me in." I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, I found the box open and a strand of hair inside. Long gray and not mine. I used to think my aunt was just eccentric, not dangerous. Just strange in a harmless, old lady kind of way. The kind of person who talks to her garden, keeps jars of buttons sorted by emotional associations instead of color, and never answers the phone on Tuesdays because they're listening closer on Tuesdays. I always chalked it up to old age or loneliness. Then she died. She left everything to me. I didn't expect it. I hadn't seen her in nearly 6 years. I was her only relative left, apparently. No children, no siblings. Just me, her sister's son. The house was in the middle of nowhere. A long, sagging structure surrounded by pine trees that seemed too tall and too silent. The kind of place that shouldn't echo, but somehow does. It took me nearly 2 hours to find the room. I was going through her things, most of it junk, honestly. Old dolls, dusty furniture, 100 or so books about the paranormal. But behind a false panel in her bedroom closet, I found a narrow hallway I'd never noticed as a child. At the end of the hall was a door. No knob, just a small circular indentation in the center, like a place to press your palm. I don't know what possessed me to do it. I touched it, and the door unlatched with a soft hiss, like it had been sealed. The room was wrong. Not messy, not frightening at first glance, just wrong. It took my brain a few seconds to process why it felt that way. There were no corners. None. The walls curved seamlessly into one another, floor into wall, wall into ceiling. Everything rounded. It felt like being inside a giant egg or the belly of something that had grown around me. The only furniture was a single chair and a mirror, tall and black and slightly warped, leaning against the far wall. That's when I noticed the buzzing. Not loud, not electric, organic, like a hive somewhere far away. Constant, soft, just beneath my hearing. I turned to leave, and the door was gone. Not shut, gone. Just seamless wall where I had entered. I remember my heart pounding in my throat. I backed into the chair without realizing it and collapsed into it, trying to breathe slowly, trying to understand. That's when the mirror began to ripple, like water, disturbed, and something stepped through. It looked like me at first. Same height, same face, same clothes, but its eyes were all wrong. Too dark, too still, like they'd forgotten how to blink. It didn't speak, just stood there, tilting its head slightly, as if listening. Then it smiled. And when it smiled, the skin around its mouth didn't stop stretching. I turned away. I refused to look again. I closed my eyes, whispered anything I could remember from childhood prayers, from horror movies, from books. I told myself it wasn't real. When I opened my eyes, the mirror was empty. The room was silent, and the door had returned. I ran. I didn't care how or why it was back. I slammed it shut behind me and didn't stop running until I was outside, gasping in the cold, pine-scented air. That night, I dreamed of the room. In the dream, I was back in the chair, but this time, I wasn't alone. There were others, people I didn't recognize, all sitting in chairs facing their own mirrors. All of them reflections, slightly off, slightly wrong. One by one, the mirrors rippled. One by one, they were replaced. I sold the house 2 weeks later. I didn't tell the new owners about the room. I didn't know how. I tried to convince myself it never happened, that maybe I had fallen asleep, dreamed it all. Until 2 days ago, I caught my reflection smiling at me. But I wasn't. And for a second, just a second, I swear the corners of the bathroom started to bend. Thank you for joining me on these 13 haunted journeys. If you've experienced anything similar, I'd love to hear about it. Share your story in the comments below. Until next time, sleep well and keep one eye open.